I'm going to finish one nekuda from סימן Kufnun Zayin, then we'll move into Kufnun Ches, which is again, shiurim are usually on what was learned the week before. So we're just going to deal with Sif Yud in סימן Kufnun Zayin, then we'll move to סימן Kufnun Ches. Sif Yud in Kufnun Zayin, if a wall that the two shutfim built between themselves in the chatzar, and there's no argument who the karka belongs to, who the rocks belong to, etc., then each one could force, Chaber says each one could force the other one to build up to the height of Daled Amas. The Smer right away points out, not only, and this is even if earlier the wall that was between them was taller than Daled Amas. What's the reason? Because the main point of the wall is for Hezekriya. Yeah, we know that between two shutfim and a chatzar, the main point of the wall is Hezekriya. Hezekriya, the shir that kol v'chachamim is Daled Amas. That's enough. Now, if, just on a side note, if originally it was taller than Daled Amas, right? So we know the Smeh says that it's not, that it's, you don't have to go taller than Daled Amas. But there is a kinyan between them, or there is a signed shtar that they should make it taller than Daled Amas, and they agree to do it taller than Daled Amas the first time, then there is a svara to say that he could force him to go higher than the Daled Amas that he originally did. Why? Because in such a scenario, when you have a kinyan or you have a shtar, you could say chiyuvei barur, like we have later on in Siman Kufnun Zayin, where the Smen Sefkat Lamed discusses over there regarding Ne'emanas over there, that the Lashon is Chiyuvei Barur. So sometimes you have a concept of Chiyuvei Barur. So there is a svara to say that if there is a kinyan, or there is some sort of proof that originally they agreed to do it taller than that, there is a svara to say that it's so. But otherwise, up to Daled Amas is the max that you could charge him for, because that is the amount of that prevents Hezekriya, and the chiyuv is only mitzad Hezekriya. Now what happens if the other person, between them there was a wall 6 amas high, and then the wall falls, and Reuven says, I want to build it back up to 6 amas. Shimon says, Hezekriya is only 4 amas. And then Shimon goes ahead and builds on the other side of his property a wall of 6 amas tall. Then Reuven could tell him, they could force him to build a wall between them also 6 amas. Why? Because it shows that for him, this is the shear that he wants for separation between properties. And he can't say between Shimon and Levi, Shimon says, I want 6 amas, but between Shimon and Reuven, even though we had 6 amas before, I only want 4 amas. That doesn't fly. If he himself goes and he builds another wall, he shows that was his intention, and that is what he is planning on doing. And what? This is in the Smes of Katnach Avdal, and therefore, if the wall now, but the other nekuda over there is that if the wall is separate, how much do you build? It's mechaber plus a smeh. How much do you build across from it is only the amount that you did, that Shimon did his own wall on the other side. Megala das, you built a wall, huh?
You built a wall on the other side, you want to have enough of it. That shows
It doesn't have to be Mitzad Hezekriya.
That shows
that he wants to have, no, Mitzad Hezekriya. Mitzad Hezekriya, Daled Amas is Daled Amas.
Right.
The Chachamim didn't give shiur taller than Daled Amas. Nobody, that's the shear. But it shows that he wants that kind of wall separating, or that kind of wall for whatever reason. Could be between him and the other person, could be because he wants to build a sukkah that's 8 feet tall. And the Daled Amas is only 6 feet tall. So he wants to build a sukkah, so he built up another wall on the other side. So now it shows that is the height that he's planning on using. However, it only goes to the width that he did on his own side, on his own property. So if he built it only, if the boundary wall is 20 amas long, and the wall that Shimon built in his property is only 10 amos long. So he only has to participate in the additional 2 amos in the boundary wall, equivalent to the 10 amos that he has on his property, because that shows how much he's actually planning on using for that height. The same thing will apply if he does certain indentations on his side of the wall to show that he's planning on putting beams on his wall. And therefore that also shows that he wants to use the wall at that specific height. So he can't come and say, I made indentations for the purpose of putting beams at the height of 6 amos, but I'm not paying you for the last 2 amos, because he's obviously planning on using it. And that's the klal that goes through all the simanim, this siman and the next siman. It means Saikuf Nun Zayin, Saikuf Nun Ches, and you see it a little bit before also, that a lot of times you have the klal of what has a kriya is, or what the chiyuv of a person is to be able to participate financially. But if he's going to have hanoah from something that somebody else did, a lot of times he is going to have to pay for the hanoah, and if it's done on property that belongs to both of them, or something that he has a right to demand payment for. It means he can't,
He can't even, if he's having hanoah, he's putting in the carriers, he doesn't have a right to do that unless he pays for it. Like, it's not that he, as a result of putting in, he can't even put it in to begin with.
Right, he can't mikara do it, he has to pay for it, yeah. He can't say that, because what could he say? He says, listen, mitzad, Krumaswara could say, Dalad Amos has a kriya, right? Now, I don't need more than Dalad Amos. You want to go 6 amos, that's perfectly fine with me. Now you made 6 amos, because Alpi halacha, I only have to pay for Dalad Amos. I paid you up to Dalad Amos. You went and you added another 2 amos yourself, because you wanted another 2 amos. Now I want to go and I want to put, and you made a solid, strong wall that's not going to break from any extra weight. And I want to come and I want to put my sukkah beams on top of it and make a sukkah. And he could say, well, what kind of chutzpah you're asking me to pay for it? Yeah, why are you asking me? So that's the answer is no. This is Zenan of Chaser doesn't apply in such a scenario when the wall is there and it shows that you wanted to have a knife from it. And this line goes across, this idea goes across to other similar cases which we're going to be discussing in a second. Now, the Smeh right away points out something obvious, that when you see these indentations on top of the wall, just make sure before you charge Shimon that Shimon was the one who actually made the indentations. It's not that Reuven, when he built the wall, he made the indentations on both sides, having in mind that down the line, one day I'm going to come and I'm going to settle this dispute with Shimon. I'm going to get paid from him. So why should I make it without the indentations? Make kara. I can make the indentations now, and then later I'll work it out with him, and when I'll get paid from him, I'll let him use it. So that's why the Smeh says you have to make sure that you know who made the indentations. You have to know who is, that just because there is some sort of siman that shows that the person wants to have a noah, doesn't mean that he's actually the one who did it. Could be somebody else did it. Could be the first person did it.
How can a person do something on a wall that he built on his own property?
No, the wall is built between the 2 properties. The middle wall. And we say that above Dalad Amos, you don't have to, Shimon doesn't have to pay, right? But Reuven built at 6 amos, and on top of the wall, he made indentations,
The whole width of the wall?
Made the whole thing, built the whole thing. And on top he put indentations going both ways.
Oh, like this way?
He put on each side indentations for the beams. So then he comes and he takes Shimon to Bezin and he says, there's indentations on the wall, pay for the wall. And Shimon says, I didn't put them there. So I told you, just make sure that Shimon actually was the one who put the indentations there. Don't just take it for granted that because there's indentations, it's and the Ramah says the same thing applies to any other form of Siman that shows that a person wants to have anoia from what the other person, that he's having anoia from the whole height. But ultimately, you still have the issue of Zenan V'Zelei Chaser over here, right? Because I mentioned it before. That you look in the K'tzos in Sifkat Midalef explains that this halacha is according to Shittas HaTaisvis, and he's chayev, even though Zenene V'Zelei Chaser Klal, in this scenario he's still chayev, and he brings.
So you mentioned that previous year that Zenene V'Zelei Chaser, no one holds it. Like it's only brought in the case of dividing karka.
No, Zenene V'Zelei Chaser is across the board. It's kafir namidas daim. What do you mean nobody holds it? Everybody holds it.
Any time that you could claim that I could have demanded money from you, we don't say Zenene V'Zelei Chaser. Anything that's
right, but ultimately now the question is, this is the K'tzos over here says it also. He says, God brings a machlekes. He says that this is only according to Shittas Taisvis, that there could be a situation, a Zenene V'Zelei Chaser, at all, klal, and still we say that you're chayiv mammon. And that K'tzos right away says that, but according to the Yam, that brings the Yam Shel Shloime, there's nishta zeh.
Taisus hold like that you only say that in the case that he can. Like,
he can charge him money, yeah.
No, we almost never say that.
Yeah, pretty much. And the K'tzos, don't forget, the first year we spoke about this Choshen Mishpat, we went through the svara of the K'tzos about Zenene V'Zelei Chaser. That the K'tzos B'chla has a whole shit in Zenene V'Zelei Chaser that be'etzem you are allowed to charge for it. The first K'tzos and Kufnun Gimel, second K'tzos, right in the beginning. Be'etzem you could charge for it. Elamai Chacham made it takana fakert, because it doesn't make sense that you should be able to have enough from somebody else's property without paying for it. So K'tzos l'shita say that according to Tikkun Ha'olam there should be, it doesn't make sense. The end of the chaser is a chiddush, not the normal way of thinking. But he brings over here that according to Yam Shel Shloime, takev there's lo chaser at all, he doesn't have to pay for it. Even if it's megaladas that he has a noah from this Marshal, yeah? Huh? Now what? Megaladas, you do pay for it. So he says, but the Yam Shel Shloime explains on that Gemara that this is what he says, it's mashma from there, that if it's completely lo chaser, then you can't charge for it. There must be some form of chaser, otherwise he's not going to be able to do it. According to Tosfos, you don't have to go to the chaser part. The Nesivis takes an easier approach to this and says there is some form of chaser. The wall gets weak a little bit. The wall gets dark. There's something happens to the wall, which causes there should be some slight chaser over here, and therefore, based on that, it falls out of the category of the chaser.
Why is that a small thing? Max curious that making the whole wall.
Depends how big how strong the wall is. What do you mean? You could build a wall that could hold strong beams. How do you think they build big buildings? They don't make them from plaster. It's obviously made in such a way that it could hold big beams. So it depends what kind of wall you do. Lav dafka, that putting beams on top of a wall will make the wall collapse. The Nesivis also says another point is that still in all, even Zenene V'Zelei Chaser, it's clear that Meshalem Kefi Hanoasa, you have to calculate b'mashayr exactly what the hanoah is that you're having from it, and not that once you have hanoah, you have to pay for the full half of what you're doing. In this scenario, it's only Meshalem Kefi Hanoasa, what the Ramah says, that Megala Daite from anything. You have to Meshalem Kefi Hanoasa, and the same thing the Aruch HaShulchan says. So therefore, somewhat of a common case. This is if you have a building which has units, and one person on the top floor builds himself a porch, and the guy under him decides, oh, I have now a roof that's sticking out, and I want to have. I could close it off. I don't have to spend that much money on it, because the roof is the most expensive part of it. and I'm not going to spend that much money. I'll just put up some walls around it, and I have an extra room in my house. So, l'chayra, he has to pay kafir anase, right? Because that's what he's using. He doesn't have to pay half of the extension of the guy upstairs. He just has to pay kafir anase, whatever the hanoah is that he has from this, because he's having hanoah from what the other one built on top of him.
Why is this in my plan? When you build a wall, you have to pay for the full wall. You don't pay for the main on the oil or whatever.
Because over here, that means you have to see what the kafir anase. You have to cheshbon what the anase is. Not that he can't charge him for the full amount of the extension that he did over there. There's a difference between building a roof and building a floor. Floor, you have to put, it costs much more. However, could be that according to the Nesivis, being that the guy upstairs is loy chaser klal, and the whole chiddush of the Nesivis is by hanaase is there's a little bit of chaser, lav dafki doesn't have to pay. That's essentially the point I want to discuss in Siman Kufnun Zayin. Move to Siman Kufnun Ches. Siman Kufnun Zayin basically discussed all the dinim of between chaser, between kaisel, between two chatzeres, which is the din of hezek re'iyah. Moving to Kufnun Ches, which is the kaisel between ginais. Kaisel between ginais, you go into a whole machlekes that you already know from the beginning of the Beis Yosef, and beginning of the Tur, and you have there in the Drisha and the Prisha, the Svaras, which you're going to go through them, you're going to see them. You have a wall in a gina, is it mitzad hezek re'iyah, is it mitzad ein hara, or is even ein hara, it's not, and it's only mitzad midas chassidus. Yeah, so you have two shutfim which had a gina together, and they decided that they want to divide it. Yeah, that's, what does it mean that they decided they want to divide it? The smeh gives you a chiddush, not chiddush, but it's seemingly a simple thing, that this is parallel to what we learned in the beginning of Kufnun Zayin. If it must be, if it has din chalukah, then it has din chalukah. And if it doesn't have din chalukah, then if they make a kinyan between them, you can still be kaifer. One can be kaifer, the other one kaifer and lachleik to do it. And what's shir kadei chalukah? The smeh over here explains it, mentions it in short. In the Drisha, he explains it at length, that each one could plant a half a kav in his property. So then, if they want to divide it, then they have to make a goder between them, even if there is no specific minhag in town to make a goder. If it's for sure minhag in town to make a goder, you for sure do it. If it's tam that there is no minhag to do a goder, you still have to do it. That's by a gina. And if there's a minhag not to do a gader, the smeh says obviously you follow the minhag. Because you have three levels. You have a chatzir, or even if there is no minhag to stam, if there is no minhag to do it, you still do it. And even if there is a minhag not to do it, there's still you could still kaif for such a thing because it has a kliyah. You have by a gineh that if you have a minhag not to do it, you can't be kaifer, but by stam you could be kaifer, for sure if there is a minhag to do it. And you have a bikah, that by stam, you're not, if the stam, then it's like as if there's a minhag not to do it. Yeah, why? Gina is in between a chatzir and a bikah, because a stam gina is like a makom shenagu, stam bikah is like a makom shaloi nagu, and therefore if it's a case where the minhag is not to, and one person decides he does want to do it, then that person could make on his own side a wall, pull into his side, make a chazis on his side, so that way it's going to be a siman if it falls, and then it's good. And if they both agree to do it, this is all from the Beis Yosef, because the Beis Yosef summarized everything in the beginning of the siman. Then each one of them makes a chazis. We're going to see it later in Sif Dalad also. What's the difference between a gina and a bika? The smeh writes in short over here that a gina has zroim a whole year. By a bika, you only have grain growing a few months a year. Yeah, that's what he says, and he tells you, go look in Prisha, I explained it better. So, okay, look in Prisha, you see how he explains it over there, he brings all the differences between them. First, and he brings he brings a discussion over there, he says, if it's mitzad hezek re'iyah, Yeah, then there's no real difference between a bika, a gina, and a chatzah. You have to look at whether there is hezekriya or not. Elamai. So therefore, what's the difference between a gina and a bika? So one explanation the Prisha brings is could be that when a person looks at a gina, when the people's eyes could ruin more by Zroim. That's one explanation. Or Zroim, or Gina has Zroim a whole year, Bika doesn't have a whole year, so therefore the Isur of Lahabit becomes Chaverim, it's Adayin Hara, applies much more often in a Gina because there's things growing over there a whole year, Mashenkin by a Bika, so therefore Stam Bika you don't have to do it. Or the third reason, because Gina has fruits and it has things that are ready to be eaten, and the person will have a bigger taiva to go and take a tomato off his friend's garden, and because it's ready to eat, then walk into his friend's bika and chew on raw corn or on raw kernels. Huh? That's what? Yeah. So there's three different reasons. Each one, mitzad hezekriya, mitzad ayin hara, mitzad kiganev. Yeah, his head. Ayin hara more by Zroim. That's what the explanation he says. Could be that your ayin hara could cause a flower to die faster. Could cause a tomato to go bad faster, and it could cause a grain of wheat to go bad.
The first two reasons is Daladamas. According to Pino Daladamas, that has a griya. According to Pino Daladamas,
yeah. Is the third one. Ganav is even. That's what the Prisha says. That the third reason is even if you don't say hezekriya b'chal, even if you say it also lamad b'kamosim mitzad ayin hara is only mitzad chassidus, still mitzad yirah of keganev, you still have to, at least you still need 10 tfachim. Why? Because if the gadol is less than 10 tfachim, so you have a person. If you see your neighbor walking in your gan, you could always say, it was a very short gate. I was walking and I dropped something, so I jumped over the gate. But if it's 10 tfachim or higher, then you already say you didn't drop anything over there. You probably tafis all of keganev. Therefore, the yut tfachim already helps for the ganev. Now, the Prisha over here also discusses what you already know from later on Sif Gimel, that the Tur didn't write, Bichlal didn't mention the shir of Dal Damas, only mentions the shir of Yut Tfachim, which is the Shittas Rambam. And mashma that's how the Tur holds that Estaka, that is the shir, and you don't need Dal Damas, because the Tur holds like the Rambam that the Ikr is Mishum Shalei Tofes Alf Kaganev, and not because of Hezekriya. And Roya Kamas Chavera and Hara is only Midas Chassidus and not Mamash Hezekriya. And but the Beis Yosef over here mentions it later. We're going to discuss it when we get to Sif Gimel. But basically, the Beis Yosef brings both the Deis, the Dal Damas, and Yut Tfachim. In Beis Yosef, it's mashma like he's noted to the Dal Damas Shitta. In the Mechaber, he's not Machriya one way or another. The majority of Poskim Bichlal, it seems like almost everybody holds that you need Dal Damas. Let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch. So the Mechaber, so we mentioned what the Smeh says, that if there is kedei, that this siman, when it says that they agree to be chaylik, it's whether there is kedei chalukah or there is no kedei chalukah, but they made a kinyan, and then if they made a kinyan, you could be kaifa. Comes the Ktsas right in the beginning and says, I don't know where the Smeh gets it from. If you look at the lashon of the Tur, it's mashma that this only applies when there is din chalukah. And if there is no din chalukah, even if they make a kinyan between them, one could say, we made a kinyan to be chaylik. We never agreed in this kinyan that we're going to make a wall that's going to take away from me. So that's what we already had in Chatzar, and over there we say you're not trusted unless you have a proof. Over here, he is trusted. Why is he trusted over here? Because by a Chatzar, this has a kriya, and therefore he can't say we made a kinyan to do a chalukah to prevent hezekriya, but we didn't agree that I should do it on my side, that we should both should lose land. But when it comes to Gina, that it's not as much of hezekriya, over here, he says, mashma from the Tur, that he is that he is Naaman. He brings that, and he says the same thing is also written in Mishnah Melech. That's what the Ktsa says. Personally, I think it's hard to ask such a question on the Mechaber, because the Mechaber seems like the Mechaber, even though it doesn't make it clearly over here, the Mechaber is more machmer than the Tur on the whole Yesod of a wall within the Gina. We know already that the Tur holds by a Gina, that this whole thing is only Mishum Shloi Tafas Aleph Kaganev, not because of Hezekiah, not because of any other, not because of these things. So the fact that the Tur is more makel, and the fact that from the Tur it's mashma that only if there's a din chalukah you could do it, but if there's no din chalukah you're Naaman, because the Hezekiah doesn't apply over there bichlal. Lav davke, that according to the Mechaber, who is more noted that there is some form of Hezek, whether it's Ein Har or Hezekiah, would also clearly say that if there's no Hezekiah, that if there's Ein B'Kedei Din Chalukah and they were made a kinyan to be Chaylik, that a person is always trusted to say, I only agreed if it's going to be not on my property. Now what happens if you already have a wall? Kolkach, yeah. Yeah, but again, what I'm saying is that doesn't fit with Lavdavke fits with the Tur, because the Tur, if you follow the shit of the way the Prisha understands it, the Tur holds B'chalan to do with Hezekiah. It's only Shulak Tefes Avke Ganav. Huh? Yeah. So I'm saying is, but to say that this Taina applies also for the Mechaber is Lavdavke that it fits into the Mechaber. It fits much better into the Tur. Now, we said that if you have a bika, if there's stam, then there's a minig, it's like a minig shaloi ligder. And if you have a minig yidu ligder, then you have to be good. So what's the din if there was a wall between them and it fell? So Nesivis explains that it depends on Machlekes Rashi and Tosfos and what's on understanding the Gemara of Nafal Shani, that by a chotzer, Nafal HaKoisel and a chotzer, over there we're mechayev both of them to rebuild it. Over there Tosfos explains that by a chotzer, the reason why when it falls you have to rebuild it, both are responsible to rebuild it, is even in a mokim shenohagu shaloi ligdor by a chotzer. The Ktsa explains the reason over there, Tosfos explains, is because by a chotzer the minhag is that everybody has they have a regilus to do tashmish kavua b'chotzer, tashmish tsanua b'chotzer. Not because of Hezek, that's because of Hezekiah. That means they're already used to doing it. So therefore, if the wall falls, now they're already rogel, each one's rogel to do it. By a gina has nothing to do with Hezekiah, it has to do with Ein Hara. So therefore, according to Tosfos, by a gina, there's no obligation to build it from new, because you don't have the Hezekiah, like by a chotzer. By a chotzer is because you're regilus. By a gina, you don't have that regilus of Hezekiah. But according to Rashi, the reason why by a kaisel, even by mokim shenagu livna is by a chotzer, you have to rebuild it. The reason is because Nisratzu, and we say that they have made an agreement between them, Nisratzu lachlik and Nisratzu livnais, etc., etc., and therefore there's a chiyuv to rebuild it, and unrelated to whether it has a Hezekiah or not. So in a bika, if a wall falls, we say that the same logic, Nisratzu, and therefore one could be careful with the other one to build a wall, and Nesivis is not machriya one way or another, leaves it hanging. If you look at Ulam HaMishpat says, obviously it's only talking about a bika. Why? By bika, stam bika, you're not goyder. It's like a minig, it's like there's a minig not to be goyder. But by a gina, even in a place where nahagu shaloi ligder, if a wall was there and it fell, you are mechayev him to rebuild it. Why? Because a stam gina is like a mokem shenagu. So therefore, if a stam gina is like a mokem shenagu, so in a place which is mokem shaloi nagu, and there was a wall, we look at it like a chotzer, and we don't look at it like a bika. And therefore, if a wall falls in a gina, even in the mokim shenagu shaloi ligder, we still make them rebuild it, and the whole argument is only by a bika. That's where the nesivus has a suffix. If one person has a big bika, one person has a small bika, and they agree between them to make a wall, the nesivus brings the Mishnah Lamelech that the Mishnah Lamelech has a suffix whether you have to pay half, like by a chatzir. If you have a small chatzir and a big chatzir, you pay half, or each one pays percentage-wise of his bika. And the Nesivus explains that the argument is by a chatzir, the reason why they pay the same we already know, because they both have equal hezekriya one another. But by a gina, by a bika, it's only because of ayin hara, a certain few months of the year, and not because they have equal hezekriya. And therefore, the Mishnah Melech is mistapik whether you have to or you don't have to. Whether you have to pay half or you have to pay only part. And from the lashon of the Nesivus, it's mashma that he's machriya that you don't pay half, but rather you pay percentage-wise relevant to how much you used.
Not the innovation, that's less. Innovation is also has to be.
It's not the same level of hezekriya, because it's not hezekriya that's a standard. Hezekriya is a hezek tadir kira delay the whole time. By a bika you don't have that standard hezekriya the whole time. The mistakal b'kamasi shechavera is only specific time of the years. It's not as strict as it's not the hezekriya kol kach. In Sif Beis, the Mechaber says if one person sells a gina to his friend and it was surrounded by other ginas, so yesh mishaymer, even in a place where the minig is not to be goyder, you still mechayev the buyer to make the goder. Where is this from? The Beragoyla tells you it's from the Rambam, and the svara of the Rambam is because the svara he brings the Magid Mishnah. The svara of the Rambam is that the moicher, when he sells, his intention is that the lekeach should be mesalik any hezek, kol hezek, any kind of hezek that could come as a result of him. And the Smeh mentions it also, and the Smeh says that according to this, even if the gina of the buyer is mixed with the ginas of the meicher of the seller, the meicher could force him to, based on the Rambam, to force him to be mesalik, to build a wall mesalik the hezekas. Now, but this afilu, the shach and the nesivus and a few other ones also delete the word afilu and they just say skip the word afilu. It's only the meicher could do it for you. That means only if the meicher sells you a gina within his ginas, then the meicher could be kai for you, because his intention is that you, as the buyer, should remove any hezek that you are going to cause going weiter. Now, why?
If it's other people's fields, it's less their responsibility?
It's not the buyer's responsibility.
I think before it was his field, and he had whatever arrangement he had. Why wasn't there together already? It was somebody else's fields. He made some sort of arrangement?
Well, so there's different ways of understanding what the logic is.
Now it's your problem.
So you knock yourself out with your neighbors. But it's not your obligation. You can't be kai for him to do it. The buyer. Maybe the other neighbors have to do it if they have a problem with it. The Ktsas goes over here and gives an interesting svara. You have a Ktsas, you have a Taz, and you have a Nesivus, and a Shulchan, and each one is somewhat of a slightly different reason. There's a few nafkaminas that come out from them. The Ktsas in Sifkat Beis explains that even though you have that, we know that by a gina of shutfim you need only 10 tfachim, right? According to the Rambam, this is all shittas Rambam, because the beginning of this sif is also shittas Rambam, that the moicher has, that the lekeach has to pay for it. He says, based on the Magid Mishnah that we mentioned before, in this case, the Rambam will be mechayev to build dalad amas and not 10 tfachim.
In which case?
In the case of moicher gina, that he sells one of his ginas and he still has his own ginas around it. Why? Until now, the meicher owned this big gina which was combined, let's say, 4 ginas together. And he got used to, he had the gilus to do tashmish tzanua in his gina because there's nobody else over there. It's not like gina next day, gina where he's careful. His own gina, he treated like his chatzah. He was doing tashmish, he did his barbecues, he went swimming over there, whatever he had to do. So over here, it's no longer only because of Ayin Hara you're going to look at the grains. You're going to look at the tomatoes. Over here, it's mamash has a kriya.
Looking at it also has a kriya.
The has a kriya of tashmish kavua. The real has a kriya from previously. That you see tashmish sanua. That's the full-fledged has a kriya.
The Rambam usually do stuff. From here, he would hold even down.
He would hold full daladamas. Why? Not because of this has a kriya of ayin because the Rambam Bechal, because the Tafas Kigan of whatever the Rambam Bechal doesn't seem like he holds too strongly of Kamas Shel Chavere, how strong that is. Here it turns to be, it becomes like a chotzer. Why is that like a chotzer? By a chotzer, even in a place sheloi nagu, if it falls, both have to rebuild it. Why? Because there's regilus in the chotzer to do tashmish sanua. Over here, the moicher became comfortable to do tashmish sanua. The koine was not. So when the moicher sells it, he is going to continue doing his tashmish sanua. The koine is going to be mazikim. So that's why the koine has a chiyuv to put up a wall.
So why do?
According to the Rambam. Which means, obviously it's only between the moicher and the it's only if the moicher is around him, clearly. Yeah, that fits with this, what we explained, that it's only if it's a moicher, if the guinness of the moicher are around the guinness of the lekech. If there was regilus, yeah.
Isn't this sort of a chotzer not just that it's not just new, that's rave?
A lot of times, yeah, ikr tashmishim, yeah. So the guy treated this gina like a chotzer because it all belonged to him. Now, according to the Bet HaGoyla and the סימן and the Nesivis and the Aruch HaShulchan, the reason is because when the moicher sells, he has in mind that the koine should remove any hezek that could come as his result. But according to the Ktsas, it's totally in regilus. But because there is regilus, it's no longer because the mindset of the moicher is that a koine has to remove every hezek. It's because there is an actual hezek. Because there's regilus, and it became like a chotzer. So that's why, could be that according to the Nesivis, even in such a case, moicher gina ben ginaisav, it's lav dafka, you need 4 amas. The chiddush of the Ktsas is you need 4 amas because it turns to be like a din of a chotzer. But according to the Nesivis and to the סימן and to the Bet HaGoyla and to the Shach, it's 10 tefachim would still be enough because again you only need 10 tefachim according to the Rambam. So this is the same Rambam. So if you don't insert over here the svara of regilus, you don't have to worry about you don't have to move it from 10 tefachim to daled amas. And like Levi mentioned, if a wall falls in a gina or in a bika, and the wall was daled amas tall, so they got used to doing tashmish tzanu over there. There's regilus over there. They're doing kol tashmishim over there. Then even the Rambam would be moided that you need 4 tefachim because of the regilus. Mashenkein, the Nesivis will still remain with the suffix. The Taz is a third shitta. Not because they made an agreement before, that it's the ideology of the moicher, and not because regilus. He says, Taka, it's because the moicher expects the koine to do it. But why does the moicher expect the koine to do it? We know kol moicher b'ayin yafu moicher. So why is it? Why is it over here it's different? Why does over here he's expecting to do it? Tas is very simple. What do people plant in Ginois? Israel. Stuff that is a shail of kilayim. This moicher, when he had all the Ginois together, he planted everything one kind. So there was no shail of kilayim. And he planted full. Now he comes and he sells a quarter of his gina to somebody else. So his zroim are up to the border of where he sold. Now, if the koine is going to go and he's going to plant a different kind of thing over there, if there is a gader, for kilayim, you could plant all the gader. If there is no gader, then you have to make a distance between them. So what's going to end up happening? The moicher is going to have to go and uproot a whole row around the perimeter of what he just sold. Because the kohen is going to plant, and the moicher is now going to be stuck because he has a shail of kilayim. So the moicher is take ba'ayin yafu moicher, but he's not moicher ba'ayin yafu to such an extent that he has to lose that he has to uproot his vegetables. So therefore, that's the svara of the Rambam, that even in a place shenagu sheloi ligdor by a gina, in this scenario, because he planted his zroim all the way to the edge, so therefore he's not going to want to lose. So therefore over here he has to make a gader. So shaila is by gina shel shutfim. Why don't we say that? So he says very simple, by gina shel shutfim, whether they're already somewhat divided where each one is planting, they already have the distance between them. So it's not like if you're going to put a gader, one person, if you're not going to put a gader, one person is going to lose out when you make the chalukah. No, because they already have the somewhat of a delineation mark. They already know to prevent the issue of kilayim. So therefore, by shutfim, you don't have this issue. But and therefore, if nagu shaloi ligdor, you're not koifa ligdor. But over here, when you sell a gina within your ginas, according to the Rambam, because you have this issue of potential kilayim, therefore you have to make the gader, you koifa him to make the gate. And the fourth reason is mashma from the gro. The gro is a bunch of gros on this beginning of this sif. The last one over here says the way he explains the Rambam. He says the svara is simple. The Rambam's reason is we know already shloi tafes keganev. So when you have shutfim bechatzer begina, we're not choishish that one shutf is going to look. They're sharing the same gina, and obviously one is walking into each other's property. That's why they don't have any gate between them. So the whole chashash of shemay tafes keganav doesn't apply when you have shutfim in a gina. So therefore, makom shenagu shaloi ligdor and kayfan ligdor. There's no gate between them, and they have a gina that they're both walking in and out. Nobody's going to be choished. Shutfim are not going to be choished each other. If they would be choished, they would put a wall. Nagu shaloi ligdor means that there's a minig in this place that shutfim trust each other. That's why they don't put a gader in a gina, because one shutf doesn't believe that his neighbor is going to steal his tomatoes, or he doesn't care if he's going to steal his tomatoes, whichever way it's going to be, one or the other. But there's not going to be a shaila of itofes keganev. But when you have a moicher, who he sells a piece of his property, now if the kohen is going to suddenly start roaming around his tomatoes, he's going to be worried. He's going to be itofes keganev. And therefore, he says, according to the Rambam, in this case, even Mamalkim Shanagu Shalei Ligdor, the kohen still has to be goider. But this is all shittas Rambam. The Rambam is chaylik on it, and he says that Yashayimrim that you go after the minhag k'may b'shnei shutfim, like in two shutfim. V'chein ikar. That's the Rambam says. What's k'may b'shnei shutfim? The Smeh explains right away. The kavana is like shutfim in a gina before. That if it's stam gina, you're koife, and if there's a minhag not to be goider, you can't be koife. And if there's a minhag to be goider, you could be koifer. Or if there's no minhag, you can also be koifer. And the Smeh says the same thing applies when he sells him a half a gina. If he sells him a half a gina, chatzi gina, same thing would apply. You follow the minhag. Now, the Smeh doesn't explain, neither does the Ramah explain. What does it mean yesh chelkim? Yesh chelkim on what? Yesh chelkim that are kokefi a minhag, and therefore, if the minhag is to be goider, so the lekeach has to pay everything. If the minhag has to be goider, the moicher has to pay everything. Or if the minhag is to be goider, they both have to do it together. The pashtus is that they both have to do it together, right? Because if that's the minhag, if it's kishnei shutfim, like the Smeh says, look back at the previous if, so it means both do it together. And Ulam HaMishpat says no. The Yesh Omrim disagree on the whole notion that the Lekeach has any responsibility over here, B'chlal. The Yesh Omrim say that the Moicher has a responsibility. The Ulam HaMishpat says the Moicher has a responsibility to be goider. And when does the Moicher have a responsibility to be goider? When the minig is to be goider. Or when it's stam. That's like a minig, ligder. But if there's no... But otherwise, the Lekeach never has responsibility to be goider when he's a Lekeach. I mean, it changes the whole thing. Moicher ba'in yafo, Moicher, whatever it is. The Lekeach has zero responsibility. Why? Just like we had in Siman Kuf Nun Daled, the end of Kuf Nun Daled. If somebody buys a property, if somebody buys a property, and there's windows facing a chotzer, yeah, so then the other guy can't go to the new buyer and tell him, go block your windows. The Lekeach is not responsible. The Lekeach is potter from these responsibilities, even though he is essentially the mazik. And over here, same thing, Lekeach has zero responsibility on him, and that's what the Yesh Omrim hold. The Ulam HaMishpat ends with Tzarich, but the way he builds this whole explanation, it's pretty clear that he holds that the Lekeach is potter from any chiyuvim, and the Yesh Omrim is that in cases where you need to, the Moicher is going to be fully responsible to do it. Sif Gimel, we already discussed it earlier, just the Machlekes, if the Mechaber brings the two shittas, if it's Dal Damas or Ten Tfachim, he's not Machriya over here. In the Beis Yosef himself, it seems like he's not that you need Dal Damas. The Knesset Agdel over here says that Kol HaGeonim are Choylek on the Rambam. He brings it from the Maram Galanti. He says everybody disagrees on the Rams. The Knesset Agdel brings another few interesting nekudas I'm going to mention, another two interesting nekudas in the beginning of, all in Hagoy Satur on the beginning of Kuf Nun Ches. For example, he brings in the name of Maram Galanti that if you have a wall between a house and a gina, there's no ein choylek that you need 4 amos. Only if it's a wall between a gina and a gina do you need 10 tfachim. The Rambam only holds 10 tfachim when it's gina, but gina to baisi for sure needs 4 amos. He also mentions that if you have 2 ginas, one next to each other, one gina is taller and one gina is next to each other, but one gina is higher up and one gina is lower down. He brings the shit of the Ramban, which is chilek on the Rambam, that the Ramban holds that the one on top, the one that's higher up, has to be mishtatev with the wall of the guy on the bottom up until the height that needs to be done. But from that height upwards, the hezek that he's doing himself, the hezek re'iyah that he's doing himself, the Ramban Lashitase, that his hezek re'iyah mamash, the hezek re'iyah is doing, he has to continue building up the wall himself. That's only according to the Ramban. Now the Aruch HaShulchan says, B'chal, today we're not noyeg in Dal Damas and the Gina. Just pointed out to you that that's what it is. Now we're just going to finish this. Dal Damas, no, 10 Tfachim is enough. It doesn't say how much we're noyeg. It says we're not noyeg the Dal Damas b'zman. The Aruch HaShulchan Sif Beis. So finish with Sif Daled. In a Biko, we say there's no chiyuv to be goider. And if one wants to be goider, he could pull into his own property, and he makes a chazis, 1 amma, with sid, to show that it's his. If in case it falls, if both of them do it together, each one does a chazis. The Ramah says chazis lav davke, but even another siman, if they were noiheg to have a different siman. The Smeh says that it's not enough. If both of them do it, we're not choshid that one is going to come and is going to say, Kula Shali, and scrape it off. Yeah, really I was planning on talking about Sif Hey, which is a really geshmaka siman, Sif. There's a Taz, the Shach, the Ktsas, the Shanas Yaakov, and even half a line from the Sheres Yehuda that go against the second Yesh Omrim that it makes no sense, the second Yesh Omrim in Sif Hey, but there's no way that it's going to even be able to begin it in the next 5 minutes. Maybe in 7 years when we do the cycle again. We'll continue next year. Is going to be on the next Vayter and what's being learned later. The Hemshech of the Siman.